Hello, my name is Kelsey and I'm a student nurse at Cedar Crest College. The research topic that I chose to look at was how body mass index affects pressure ulcer development. I formulated the PICO question: in hospitalized patients, does a body mass index outside normal range compared to a body mass index within normal range increase the incidence of pressure ulcers? They're alarmingly prevalent among hospitalized patients. We see that nearly 2.5 million patients per year will develop a pressure ulcer, and roughly $9 to $11 billion per year is put into caring for these patients who develop a pressure ulcer. A lot of time, money, and effort is being put into this event. We see that Bremner et al. Believe that nurses single-handedly play the biggest role in pressure ulcer development because they're responsible for conducting thorough skin assessments on their patients. The databases that I used to formulate this synthesis were WorldCat, Ovid Journals A to Z, and Google Scholar. Some of the research keywords that I used were PU, pressure ulcer, BMI, body mass index, prevention, weight, and skin compromise. All of my articles were peer-reviewed between the years of 2009 and 2017, and they were offered in full text. The first research study was by Drake et al. This was a descriptive cross-sectional study based out of a North Carolina medical center. The purpose of their study was to see how a body mass index greater than 40 compared to a body mass index less than 40 increased the incidence of pressure ulcer development. They found that morbid obesity, which was a BMI greater than 40, was 3 times more likely to develop a pressure ulcer than compared to patients who had a BMI below 40. They believe that this is because a higher BMI greater than 40 led to skin compromise. They also found that 29% of the underweight population had a pressure ulcer, and they also believe that mildly increased body mass index can actually protect the patient from developing a pressure ulcer. The design and the incomplete Braden scores were identified as potential limitations of this study. The researchers recommend including body mass index in already existing tools used to detect pressure ulcer development, or to predict pressure ulcer development. They also believe it's important for all healthcare providers to strongly assess mobility in their patients, as immobility can potentially lead to skin compromise, which can lead to pressure ulcer development. The next study I looked at was by Hein et al. This was a retrospective cohort study based out of a Midwestern academic medical center. Their purpose was just simply to study the impact that body mass index has on pressure ulcer development. The researchers' results found that a body mass index less than 19 and greater than 40, which were identified as body mass extremes, were 3.7 times more likely to cause a pressure ulcer than an obese BMI, and was 1.9 times more likely to cause a pressure ulcer than a BMI that fell within normal range. They also found that a BMI less than 19, which they classified as underweight, was 3.3 times more likely to develop a pressure ulcer than a patient who was obese. Some limitations were that all the data was used from discharge medical records. Human error was present in the documentation, or could have been present in the documentation. There was missing height requirements in the Braden scale, and the patient's specific illnesses were not considered when they were recording the data. The researchers recommend that healthcare team members work together to properly mobilize and to turn patients. That way it's done correctly and it can prevent pressure ulcer development. They also recommend implementing safe patient handling equipment that could be used to properly care for obese and morbidly obese patients. The last study that I looked at was by Van Glider et al. This was an observational cross-sectional cohort study, and it was from hospitals worldwide, so they had a huge sample size because they were able to sample from hospitals internationally. The purpose of their study was to look at parallels amongst body mass index, weight, and pressure ulcer development, and they looked at body mass index and weight independently, separate of one another, and how each of them individually impacted pressure ulcer development. When the research was concluded, they found that the highest prevalence of pressure ulcers was 10.5%, seen in patients who had a BMI less than 18.5. They also found on the opposite end of the spectrum that a BMI greater than 50 could also greatly affect skin integrity and skin compromise. They found that extreme obesity increases the risk for pressure ulcer development, just like Hein et al. Found, because extreme obesity can lead to immobility, which can lead to skin compromise, which can ultimately lead to pressure ulcer development. Some limitations were the voluntary participation, the facility's self-reporting, the lack of geographical distribution, and that the results were not validated by the sponsor. Some recommendations is that all healthcare providers understand just how prevalent obesity is in the United States population and use that information to tailor their care when treating patients who are obese and morbidly obese. They also said that healthcare providers should work together in treating this population of patients. So in conclusion, body mass index was found to effectively predict pressure ulcers in all 3 studies. Body mass extremes greater than less than 18 or less than 19 depending on the study to greater than 40 directly related to pressure ulcer development. And obesity increases immobilization, which therefore can compromise skin integrity, leading to pressure ulcers, and all 3 studies found that to be true. So that's the conclusion of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed.